This program is made possible through generous donations from viewers like you. To pledge your support, please visit aroodawakening.tv/give. Thank you.
Why do historians say that the Exodus never happened? Well, because according to the timeline of the Exodus used to this day, they're right. When you put all of the pieces of the puzzle together, the story of the Exodus, as traditionally understood, never happened. It could not have happened. But do they have the wrong timeline? What if they're in the right place but the wrong time? Tonight, Egyptologist David Rohl explains a shocking misunderstanding that may change the story of the Exodus forever. Why tonight? Because rocking the boat is just something we like to do at the end of the sixth day after the sun is set on Shabbat Night Live.
Michael, it's going to be a great show tonight.
It will be.
Stand by, studio. 30 seconds.
Thank you. 1 minute's air, Michael.
Oh, thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Ellie.
Well, Shabbat Shalom to our fans. Welcome to Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood. You know, I guarantee you that after tonight's show, you will never look at the story of the Exodus the same way again. Egyptologist David Rohl, who is featured on the documentary Patterns of Evidence, will present his findings on this stage, and you will be amazed. It's all going to be a fun ride tonight, so hang on. But first, please welcome my co-host for this evening, the Director of Ministry Development for A Rood Awakening International, Annie Reed.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Annie. How are you?
I'm wonderful. What about you?
Very good, very good. You know, a lot of our viewers tonight may recognize David Rohl from something other than Egyptology, because he used to be in the band The Moody Blues way back when.
Oh, how fun.
He did. Yeah, and you'll recognize David's name because he was in that band, but since then he's become one of the world's top Egyptologists. He's a very brilliant guy. I've met him, very interesting guy. I don't know if you've met him. You met David Rohl?
I actually was not here. He did a conference with us in 2015, which is what you are going to be able to see today.
Yes, it's wonderful. He's an awesome guy. I love him. I consider him a friend. And when he was in the studio, he got along with everyone, especially Michael. In fact, I encourage you to watch very carefully tonight because you're going to learn something that not many people know. So watch, learn, repeat what you learned, and you will be the smartest person in your entire circle of friends. Is how that's going to go.
I need to watch.
Now, speaking of friends, we have the Chronological Gospels Season 2, Revelation, is coming.
That's right. And what inspired this topic of conversation is that Michael joined us last week to tell us about Good TV, which is the Asian Christian television network to be on. And I actually handle a majority of the television contracts here in the building. So I know how expensive it is for us to air, you know, and we get a lot of comments, you know, on why do we charge for the love gifts and why are we pushing for donations. We have over 1 million people view us on a yearly basis, but we have less than 1% that support this ministry.
Wow. So 80% of the people are not doing the work of the other 20 who are contributing.
That's right, that's right. So if everybody gave $10 on a monthly basis, we would never have any kind of issues whatsoever. But at this time, that's not an option for us. So for that 1%, we're so utterly grateful. You don't understand what you mean to us. You literally keep us on the air. For many networks, you know, we had the opportunity to go on a network, a secular network that we never thought was going to be possible, but they charge $15,000 a half hour.
Wow. Yeah, for 1 week show, 15 grand. Yep.
And that's just for 1 day, 1/2 hour. If you were to do multiples, it would be more.
And that doesn't include production costs of putting the show together. That's just airing it.
That's right. So everything else, production, if we have to take our crew out on site, hotels, meals, or anything of that nature is not included, which this is the stuff that you don't need to know about. You know, we keep this away from our partners for a very good reason. It's It's not something you need to know about. You need to know the end result, which is saving souls, and that's what it's all about. But I just want to put it into perspective for those that do join us on a weekly basis. We're not asking, to build our own kingdom. We're just simply asking because we want this message to go out to as many people as possible. To the unbeliever and to the believer in every circumstance. We have very special individuals that we can thank for the season 2 of the Chronological Gospels, and that's our executive producers. Now with this new opportunity of going possibly on the History Channel and other secular networks, including even more Christian networks, we would love for you to join us. It's just a commitment of $5,000 or more. You get to be named, but you leave a legacy well beyond yourself in this process.
That's right. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. The Chronological Gospels Revelation is going to explain a lot of things to people. Michael takes you through the Revelation like no one else can. He actually finds it the simplest book in the Bible. Go figure. Revelation confuses everybody, including me.
Well, I remember we were sitting in one of his, the very first episodes. We sit in a meeting and we go through the script. That's it, we all sit down and we have our input. And I remember walking out of there and telling Michael I had a church today after an episode. I mean, it really is that insightful. Our ambassadors, they help us pay for airtime. We are so grateful for those that just stand with this ministry. You have no idea just the impact that you're creating, not only to the Asian countries, but Africa and Europe, and even here in the United States, the lives that you're impacting on a regular basis. I had a phone call from the sister of a prisoner the chaplain brought the TCG Season 1, the Chronological Gospel Season 1 videos to show the inmates. And so he told his sister, and she called to get him a copy of it.
Okay.
Of the Chronological Gospels Bible. So you are impacting people you don't even realize.
Wow. And like you said, there's the executive producers, there's the ambassadors, but even, a lot of people say, well, why do you sell things on Shabbat Night Live? Well, each thing that's on here is actually a contribution. All of these things that we have on here are fundraisers. It's to make all of this happen. So we're not selling it for the sake of selling it. It's more of, if you want to donate in not the traditional sense, but you'd like to get a DVD or a teaching out of it, well, that's what we have the DVDs for. Or you can just donate to the ministry. So if you'd prefer not to, buy something on Shabbat, absolutely. None of us like to buy something on Shabbat. Leave it till after Shabbat. But that's why we do it on Shabbat Night Live, just to let you know about it. These are all fundraisers for the things that Annie is talking about.
I know. And again, we're just grateful. So I love this month's love gift. I think they're unique and very special. So if you're watching us, if you've never heard of what a shofar is, it's very timely. We're actually getting ready to go into the fall feast, which is a very prominent time in our faith, in our walk for a lot of believers. Michael actually did a great teaching on it.
He did. Yeah, we're going to get into that in just a minute. First, we've got to take care of what's happening tonight on tonight's episode. Tonight, Annie's getting very excited about this, so we've got to. But first, you can see tonight's episode on DVD because we already have it on DVD. As Annie mentioned, this is a conference from a couple of years ago. You can order it right now. It's part of a conference we held all about this discrepancy in the Egypt story. It's called the First and Last Exodus Conference. You can get it right now at roodawakening.tv/Exodus DVD. Now, learning about the Bible and realizing the truth that we're missing all our lives is one thing, but we'd like to pray with you too. So, Annie, I understand we have some prayer requests that we'd like to share with people.
So, there's a couple good ones. The very first two are really great.
Keith. Yes, I remember this one.
And then I have some as well. So
okay. So Keith says, please pray with me that Yeshua restores my heartbeat and heart rate to normal. So obviously Keith is having a medical issue. So obviously Keith, he is our great physician, and we will pray with you about that for sure.
And Gavin there,
Gavin, yes. Gavin says, I am a Torah observant 10-year-old. Wow. Who follows the way that the Messiah has taught his disciples. I'm asking for prayer from my grandmother, who has a severe case of dementia and possibly struggling with spiritual strongholds. So yes, Gavin, we will pray with you tonight.
Okay, so I have Mika, who has 3 prayer requests. And again, you can go to roodawakening.tv/prayer to submit any prayer requests to us at any time, or give us a call at the phone number down below. We'd love to pray with you any day of the week. That's a great way to minister and lift each other up. But she asks that we would focus, or that we would pray that her focus be narrowed down to 3 things. Her husband, John, who rejects the Torah, that Yahovah's spirit rests upon her and is with her and rises her up. And also that we pray for him to give her a humbleness and courage to obey. So that was her prayer request. And then we have Dalton, who is asking for prayer for a sick grandmother of friends.
Okay.
Which right now there's a lot of sickness going on and a lot of, just a lot of need.
Yeah, a lot of spiritual strongholds, all kinds of things going on.
And again, it's the season. You know, we're going into the fall feast. This is most of the time when we are preparing spiritually for the coming tribulation and the coming
Right, it's
end days.
a test. It's a test
is.
for us.
Scott, would you mind praying?
Absolutely. Why don't you pray with us, will you? Jehovah, we want to thank you for this day. Thank you for these folks who have stepped up and are willing to pour their hearts out. We pray for Keith and Gavin and Mika and Dalton. Father, you know all of their needs, even beyond what they've written here, and we pray that you would be with each one of them. We pray, Father, that in Yeshua's name, that all of these requests would be granted. And Father, we just trust you with them because there's nothing we can do apart from you. So we just trust you with these, and we thank you in advance for answering these folks' prayer. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen.
All right, well, thank you for praying with us. If you would like to get to know us more, you can sign up for our newsletter. We send out emails a few times a week and all kinds of great information about what's going on at the ministry, all that kind of good stuff. And all you have to do is go to roodawakening.tv/newsletter. And if you do that, you'll also be the first to know about our monthly love gift. Okay, now, Addie, now we're going to talk about it. Okay.
You have no idea. I love the fall feast.
Yeah.
I just love even preparing for them and then the season that we have. And so if you've never celebrated the fall feast, this is your chance.
Oh, yes.
You will love it.
Now, monthlylovegift.com,
yes.
first of all, is where you can go to find this. Now, the reason Annie's talking about this is because we're talking about shofars, and shofars are fun.
Yes, so if you've never heard of what a shofar is, it's actually a trumpet. So you remember, Scripture talks a lot about trumpets at the last trump. It's not a trumpet, it's actually a shofar. And in Israel, they actually used a lot of these for times of celebration or warning. This is how they warned the camp. So it has a lot of great, practical uses. But for me, it's so much more symbolic than that. It's the day at hand, when the Lord returns.
That's right, and that's why the teaching for this month is the fall feasts. Exactly what Annie is talking about. It is the final teaching in Michael Rood's 20-episode Love Gift Teaching Series. And if you know anything about Michael, he saves the best for last. So this is the good one. Let me just read something on the back here. It says, in order to properly understand our Messiah's eternal priesthood, we need to have a solid understanding of the ancient Hebrew priesthood because prophecy is about to be fulfilled and you are a part of it. This is all about revelation and not necessarily when things are going to happen. This isn't about naming dates or anything like that. This is about the series of events that must happen before the Messiah can return. And Michael lays it out very simply. Like I said, he finds Revelation to be the simplest book in the Bible. So you know that it's going to be good. So now with the fall feast, for a gift of $50 or more, you'll get this and that keychain right over there. Yes.
So this is our sweet little keychain, and it says, blow the shofar in Zion. What a sweet reminder, honestly.
And it is a piece of ram's horn. It's not a piece of plastic. It's a real ram's horn.
And again, it's fall feast time. Are you guys as excited as I am? I mean, this is beautiful. It's just a reminder of what we always have to look forward to, not just the last great day, but the things that lead up to it, to let the world know that, Yeshua is King. So,
absolutely.
For a donation of $100 or more, you'll get the keychain. Again, what a reminder and a beautiful teaching. And then this wonderful showpiece. It's actually called a ram's horn. But it's such beautiful detail. These are coming from Israel. Now, I want to go ahead and let you know, right now they're having a shofar and ram's horn shortage in the land of Israel. They're going through a drought. And so the animals are not able to drink as much water as they normally do. And so they're not able to produce as many shofars. So all of these are limited quantities. We are not going to have an opportunity to reorder any of these. And so it's first come, first serve. We have very limited quantities.
And once they're gone, they're just going to disappear off the website. They won't be available by phone. So make sure you get in on it now.
But we're very grateful that we even got these pieces.
And there's several levels. You know how we usually have at least 1 or 2 levels of the love gift? This month there's 4. So that's 1 and that's 2. Now this is level 3.
Yes, level 3, which is a donation of $300 or more. But this one is extremely detailed. Again, handmade in Israel, and it has the landscape of Jerusalem right here. I mean, this is something that you put on your mantle.
And that's hand-wrapped sterling silver.
Yes, it is. So a beautiful showpiece for you. We were very reasonable for the prices. I'm not sure if you've ever bought a shofar from a store before, but we got them at a great rate, especially with these details on them. Again, made in Israel. It's actually, this is what's called a medium-sized shofar. This is an Annie-sized shofar.
That's about 24 inches. They measure them along the curve, so that's technically 24 inches or 22 thereabouts. But this one, this is the big one that we have never offered before. This thing,
Everybody.
it's unbelievable. This thing weighs, we weighed it because we have to ship it, it's 3 pounds.
Wow.
I mean, that is really heavy for a shofar because these things are just hollow kudu horns is what they are. But this thing has all kinds of metal on it. This is a sterling silver sculpture of Moses and the 10 Commandments right there. You've also got the menorah up here in the corner, and down here some grapes, I believe, too. This is a beautiful shofar. This thing is 36 inches long.
So for a donation of $500 or more, you could own this shofar. Again, limited quantities. We want to bless you this month, especially in preparation for the fall feast. You know, it's my favorite time of the year. It's the time that we should be preparing our spirits for what is to come, symbolically. So we hope that you enjoy these love gifts. They're unlike any others.
Yep. Again, go to monthlylovegift.com. This is the best love gift we've ever offered. Go there and make it quick because, like we said, these are all very limited quantities. Now, today is August 4, but on the biblical calendar, we are on the second Shabbat of the month of Av. It was during this week that Yeshua walked through the grain fields with his disciples, and they picked some grain, and they rubbed it between their hands and ate it. Now, this was the Sabbath day, so doing so was just fine, but the Pharisees had their own law apart from God's law. They argued that picking the grain and eating it like that was the same thing as a hard day of harvesting, which was, of course, not allowed on the Sabbath. So Yeshua was more than happy to point out to them that they were being ridiculous. So
Go for him.
Good for him. All right. So that's what happened on this day in history. Now, coming up in just a few minutes, the first and last Exodus with Egyptologist David Rohl, who is featured in the Patterns of Evidence documentary. It is fascinating stuff. I guarantee you are going to be enthralled. And you can get the DVD of this entire first and last Exodus weekend on a DVD at roodawakening.tv/Exodus DVD. Now, of course, if you like what you see tonight, tell your friends, tell your family. You can always watch the replay at ShabbatNightLive.com. And we want to thank you, by the way, for standing with Michael Rood in this ministry. Annie went into great detail of what it all takes to make this thing happen. And that's why your donations keep the show on the air, and we're very appreciative. So thank you very much. And there's a unique way that you can support us and get a gift as our thank you as well. Here it is right now. Take a look.
In order to properly understand our Messiah's eternal priesthood, we need to have a solid understanding of the ancient Hebrew priesthood, because prophecy is about to be fulfilled, and you are a part of it.
The time period between the fulfillment of the spring feast and the fall feast is the time of the Gentiles. This is when blindness in part happens to Israel. And that blindness in part is what opens the doors for the Gentiles to come in.
Michael Rood presents The Fall Feast, the final teaching in his 20-episode Love Gift Teaching series. We'll send you this amazing teaching, plus a ram's horn keychain for your love gift donation in August of just $50. Or with a donation of $100 or more, you'll get the teaching, the keychain, and a one-of-a-kind ram's horn shofar. The shofar is the ancient biblical trumpet used to sound an alarm, announce special events, and gather troops for war. And it will be sounded in the end times, as mentioned in the book of Revelation. Enjoy this timeless gift for your donation of $100 or more. Or for a gift of $300 or more, you can upgrade to this silver-plated Yemenite shofar, an exquisite handmade showpiece made from kudu antelope horn. And as a special one-time offer, you can even get this breathtaking jumbo shofar, featuring a silver-plated sculpture of Moses and the 10 Commandments, and a rich, unique sound unlike anything else on earth. Call now or visit us online to pledge your support of Michael Rood's End Time message and receive these beautiful gifts as a thank you for your support.
This is the testimony that is greater than the testimony of man, and this is what is reserved for this time.
Act quickly. These special gifts are very limited. Order yours now before they're gone. Make your August love gift donation now.
Again, we are back in the studio with Nehemiah Gordon, the Hebrew scholar who is in to do a series with us, which I am affectionately sort of subtitling, Let the Jews Interpret the Scriptures the Jews Wrote, and we'll give plenty of time at the end of the series for the Gentiles to interpret all the Scriptures the Gentiles wrote. Nehemiah Gordon back with us. Nehemiah, good to be back with you again.
So, Michael.
I'm excited about this series coming up.
Yeah.
And last week we left off with a statement that was made according to the Strong's Concordance, Hovah in Yehovah. Hovah means destroyer.
And I actually get this all the time, Michael. People write to me and they'll say, don't you know Hebrew? Yehovah means, oh, hail, destruction. And there's sources of Strong's Concordance that there is a word, Hovah, that according to the Strong's means ruin or mischief. I want to read you the verse. It's Isaiah 47:11, and it says, I'll read you the JPS, which you will not know how to charm away. Disaster is falling upon you, which you will not be able to appease. And the word that they translate in the JPS, the Jewish translation, as disaster is Hovah. Now, that has zero to do with God's holy name. That, you know, I once had a job, Michael, when I was a teenager, and I messed up, and my supervisor said, you know, what happened? I said, well, I assume. He said, stop. Do you know what assume means? He said, assume means you make an ass of you and me. And he actually thought that the word assume was made up of those three words. Well, saying that Yehovah has anything to do with the verb hovah, or the noun hovah, it's assume logic. You're not making an ass of me. You're making an ass of yourself if you do that. In fact, the name Yehovah is from a completely different root, which is, every Hebrew word is a three-letter root. It's from the root hey yud hey, which means to be, and it's from the three forms of the verb hayah, hoveh, hieh. He was, he is to come.
And that is found in when Moses asked the Almighty, you're sending me back to the children of Israel to lead them out. Who shall I tell them? What is your name?
Right.
And what does he say?
And the first thing he says before his name is he gives the explanation of his name, which is Eheyeh Asher Eheyeh, which literally could be translated, I will be that which I will be. And then the very next verse, he says, my name is Yehovah, which comes from that root, the root to be, not from the root destruction. Now, it's interesting, Michael, because some people say, well, the name is Yahweh. And look even in the Jewish encyclopedia. And it's interesting, the Jewish encyclopedia, according to at least one opinion that's cited there, does derive the name Yahweh from the verb hey vav hey, ruin, destruction. And they understand hence Yahweh, or Yahweh, they understand that name as a verb that means he who causes destruction, or the destroyer. That's the meaning of the name Yahweh. So it's actually quite the opposite of what, you know, some people are arguing.
Of course, this is what I grew up with. I've got hundreds of thousands of videos going all over the world in which I pronounce it Yahweh, and it is because of your research, and then you know, and really praying for insight and praying for a specific miracle to happen, where I could even go there, because I mean I had so much invested, and I'm like anyone else. I've got it invested here, and I'm going to build up my walls, and I had to decide. Make a decision that I am really going to look and try to disprove what I believe and really open my eyes to what you were saying, because there's no question. I mean, you're paid. This is your job. This is your world. The Aleppo Codex, the most important Hebrew manuscript of the Bible. You were one of the proofreaders for the scientific publication of that. Yeah. The Dead Sea Scrolls. You're, you know, the Dead Sea Scrolls reader. This is your world. This is not something that you went to American Bible school for, but you're actually trusted by the state of Israel in academia for your ability to edit these ancient documents.
At the end of the day, Michael, it's not even about me. It's about this name is documented in now over 50 Bible manuscripts. Over 10 rabbis are telling us unequivocally the secret pronunciation known to us is that the name is Yehovah. None of them say it's Yahweh. I mean, it's just so clear.
Not one of them.
Not that I was able to find. I looked in a database of over 100,000 Hebrew traditional books, and none of them that I could find said it was Yahweh.
Wait, now these collections of books, Did it cost you anything?
This was a database that comes on a flash drive from Bar-Ilan University, and you buy it, and then you do these upgrades, and it was around $1,000 over the years. And you're able to search. It was actually originally put out, this database that I searched looking for the name. It was originally put out by Bar-Ilan University for the use in the Israeli courts. The Israeli Supreme Court had made a decision that if there's something not covered by any other law in Israel, Jews have to look to traditional sources for court rulings. And they said, but we don't even know what it says in our books, right? We need these books to be searchable. So if we get a case that comes to the court, we can do a search and find out, okay, new situation, it's not in the law. What's the jurisprudence from 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago? So I was able to take that database and say, okay, well, what about the pronunciation of the name of the Father? And I found rabbis who say unequivocally that it's Yehovah.
And you're going to be bringing these things forth. Are we going to be able to see them? Yeah. Can we see the manuscripts?
You can see them for yourself. You'll see them here for the first time. I mean, nobody else has seen these. It's incredible stuff. Michael, I want to put you on the spot. I think we have a few minutes. You shared about a miracle you prayed for, and you were sharing with that story with me just before the recording, and I'd never heard it. And I know you've probably shared it with the audience, but I've never heard. Would you share it?
Oh, okay. I will. And it was a number of years ago, and I really decided I had to really take a look at what you are teaching on this thing. I have to know what the information is. And so I absorbed it all. And I'm really conflicted because, I have got a lot invested in the name Yahweh out there. A lot of videos that have gone out there.
It's not just money.
It's my reputation.
But it's also an emotional investment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it really is.
It is.
And to say, I'm wrong and I'm going to change and I'm going to go. And I knew that if I made that switch over, that there will be people that say, "Oh no, I'm forsaking his ministry, no longer support the work that we've been doing for years and all." So I know this is a reality, and so a situation comes up. One of her staff members, her cousin, is in the hospital brain dead. She went to a party, she was slipped a Mickey, and she is brain dead. She has been she is on ice. They put the jackets on for those they're going to harvest the organs. She's an organ donor. She has been brain dead for several days. They're going to unplug her now. It's all over with. And the next day they're going to do this. So we got the whole staff together. Ted Clayton, Dr. Clayton, people on our staff now were actually there in that room. And I prayed that if the Almighty wants His name to be known and declared as Yehovah, if this is going to be my responsibility that I cannot shirk anymore, that I'm asking you to raise this girl from the dead.
Wow.
So that it's a testimony to me, to us, and to that family that His name is to be known and declared as Yehovah. And that's before you found the 52 other manuscripts and all this other stuff.
I think then I probably knew of 2 or 3.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Probably,
that's all I knew of at that time. And so we all earnestly prayed for this girl.
Wow.
The next morning, they are going to unplug her. She has a 2-year-old son, and they did not want that 2-year-old boy to kiss his mother ice cold. So they warmed her body back up, brought him into the room with the rest of the family. He kissed her on the cheek. She opened her eyes. A week later, she walked out of the hospital under her own power. So that's it. That's it. And so I said, that's it. This is what I prayed for specifically. The raising
so you
of
asked
from
for
the
a
dead.
sign.
That very sign. And from then on, it's like, okay, I saw the evidence. And I know the evidence is real. Wow. I know it's right. But I need something from heaven because, our paths have been brought by the Holy Spirit together over 2 decades. And it's like, okay, it's all coming down to this. I need a miracle from heaven, and not a light one, not a flipping of the coin. I need this woman raised from the dead. And that's what happened.
Wow. Michael, I mean, this is incredible. I heard this story from you about an hour ago for the first time ever. I mean, this happened years ago. And I heard this for the first time ever. And, look, by nature, I'm a skeptic. So I asked one of your staff members, I said, is this true? And he said, I saw it myself. So I have this from a second witness, Michael, and this is incredible that God, what's happened here is you took the information that I provide and you took your inspiration and together you got revelation. And I just want to shout, hallelujah, praise Jehovah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, come on back because we are on our way to some of the most amazing discoveries, things that you didn't even know about a year ago, was completely outside of the scope of scholarship, and now is in our hands concerning the name of the Almighty just in time for his name to be declared throughout all the earth so that the whole world will know his name is Yehovah. We'll be back right after this word for you, our sponsors, our only sponsors. Thank you.
Michael Rood's Message of Truth is broadcast all over the world, but none of it happens without the monthly financial support of our Ambassador Club members. And right now, membership has more benefits than ever.
I'm giving into a ministry that is helping to feed other people that have the same hunger that I do.
Join now, and Michael Rood will send you the Ambassador Club Welcome Kit, an exclusive messenger bag stocked with teaching DVDs, Red Sea crossing cards, and more. You'll also receive ambassador-only bonus gifts whenever you make a separate donation to receive the monthly love gift. Best of all, you'll get ambassador-only sale prices in our online bookstore several times throughout the year. Plus, exclusive invitations to Ambassador Club functions at a Rood Awakening events. All it takes is a modest commitment of $100 per month or an annual gift of $1,200. Call now or visit the Rood Awakening website to join the Ambassador Club.
The last night that Yeshua was with his disciples, the Last Supper before the Passover was sacrificed, he took bread and he took wine. He said before that Abraham saw his day and rejoiced. But what does that mean? He saw his day and rejoiced. Well, it was the Melchizedek, the king of righteousness, that brought forth bread and wine to Abraham. He blessed the Most High with the blessing that Abraham taught Yitzhak, Yitzhak taught Yaakov, and is still spoken today. Whenever bread and wine is served at a Jewish table, whenever it is Sabbath, especially around the world, the bread and the wine are brought forth with this blessing. Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, the creator of the fruit of the vine. And Yeshua then said, blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. He said, this represents my body, which will be broken for you. This represents my shed blood that pays the sin penalty because of the broken covenant. As often as we do this, we do this in remembrance of him. So break the bread, share the wine, and we do this in remembrance of him until he comes.
In fact, Michael challenged me yesterday. I wasn't going to deal with this at all. I got up at 5 o'clock this morning and put this thing together very quickly for you because I wasn't intending to talk to you about this. But in the end of the day, it's part of this journey. This afternoon, we're going to talk about the actual evidence for the Exodus and the conquest and the sojourn. But I think you need to know why we have this problem. Why is it that scholars think the Bible stories of Exodus aren't true? Why are pious fiction, as they call them? And the reason is because of this mistake that was made with Pharaoh Shishak. So I'm going to have to deal with that for you now. So you need probably to be wide awake for this, and you're going to learn something about the complexities of Egyptian chronology. Okay? So just hang in there, because later on this afternoon you're going to get all the goodies. Now we're going to do a bit of work, okay? And you're going to have to do some hieroglyphs as well. You all right with that? Okay, so I'm going to explain why Shishak is not the Pharaoh Shoshenq that all the historians and the Egyptologists say he is. So we're going to start now with the discovery of Shoshenq I, and Shishak, it all began with a guy called Champollion, a French scholar who was the person in 1822 who deciphered the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Very famous, is called the father of Egyptology, because for the very first time in that 1822, we were able to read the Egyptian hieroglyphs for the first time, starting to read the king's names, read the events, the stories that you find on the temple walls. And so it was a crucial moment in Egyptology. It was actually the birth of Egyptology in 1822. Now, you can see there the Rosetta Stone. This is the document that he used to decipher the hieroglyphs in Egyptian hieroglyphs, in Demotic, which is a cursiform hieroglyphs, and in Greek, Greek there. So he was able to translate the Egyptian hieroglyphs using the Greek, which we can all read, okay? And he came up with various names like Cleopatra and Ptolemy that he read from this document. But what he really wanted to do then was to go and test out his theory, test out his decipherment by going to Egypt, and he went to Egypt a few years later. He went between August 1828 and December 1829, and he went along with a team of scholars, and he went there specifically with the Bible in one hand and a trowel in the other, to go and investigate ancient Egypt and find evidence for the biblical story in the one part of the world where now we could read the texts. So he thought we can unlock the history of Egypt in relationship to the Bible by going there and reading the walls of the temples. And the place he went to was Karnak, one of the main temples in Egypt. It is literally a book, because you walk the walls of that place and you can read the history of Egypt there, especially during the New Kingdom, the greatest empire period in Egyptian history. And he went to one particular wall. This wall is on the outside of the temple. You have the great court there and the first pylon here. But this wall here has got a relief on it, a carving. And it's actually a battle inscription. It's about a campaign of a king into the Holy Land. And so he went there to look at the document, and he found that the people that were captives brought back from this campaign were what we call Western Asiatics, or Semites. In other words, this campaign was in Canaan, up in the north. It wasn't down into Africa. It was up north, out of Egypt, beyond Sinai. And a line drawing was done of this particular wall to make it a little bit clearer. And what you can see here is the Pharaoh smiting his enemies, who were all clustered together in a ritual slaughter. And on the left-hand side, we have a scene where the god Ammon, with the tall plumes, is dragging with ropes attached to his hand here, a series of figures with ovals. Now, we know from looking at war reliefs, what this is a representation of various locations in Canaan, cities or locations, whose names are spelt out inside these name rings with figures of the captives above. And I'll go and show you them in detail in a minute. And you can see there's row upon row of these. There's another group down here where the goddess Victorious Thebes is also bringing more of these name rings towards the smiting scene. There are about 150 altogether of these names. It's a huge campaign. Now, one thing you have to know about this particular inscription is that it's an itinerary. So it's actually the route of march of Pharaoh's army through Canaan. And it's read in a special way called bustrophodon. Anybody heard of bustrophodon? It's Greek, it means as the ox plough. So you read it starting here, you go along with your plough, and you turn around and you go down a row and you come back and then you read it in that direction. And then back again. As the ox ploughs, bustrophodon, like this. So you start here, and you read along, and you drop down, and you come along that way, and then down again, like that. And because we know that, and we know that because of which name rings are connected together, we can actually work out the route that the army took through Canaan. Now, Champollion was stood in front of this wall, and he thought he'd found something very, very important. He related it to a text in the Bible, in 2 Chronicles 12, 1-4. And thus it happened that in the 5th year of King Rehoboam, Shishak, king of Egypt, marched on Jerusalem, because they had been unfaithful to Yahweh. He had 1,200 chariots and 60,000 cavalry and countless hordes of Libyans, Sukkim, which is another form of Libyan tribes, and Cushites, they're the people from the south in Sudan, who came from Egypt with him. They captured the fortified towns of Judah, and then they reached Jerusalem. This is the key synchronism I mentioned earlier. So here we have a pharaoh on a wall at Karnak whose campaign description appeared to match the story in the Bible. Now, was he right? Well, here we see part of that inscription. And you can now see the figures of the captives with the name rings and the crenellations showing the fortified towns here, and their names are spelled out in Egyptian hieroglyphs. And he focused on that one there. He was able to read all these, and he was able to read it in a way that really shocked him, because this is his drawing of the actual relief. He could read the name Judah Hamalkuth, which means Judah the kingdom. Now, he knew his Bible. They were talking about scholars from the 19th century. They're very knowledgeable about the biblical text. They're brought up on the biblical text, and they immediately thought, this has got to be Shishak campaigning in the kingdom of Judah. And it just so happens the name of this pharaoh who carved this wall is a pharaoh called Shoshenq. And he thought, Shishak, Shoshenq, they sound very similar. So this must be the biblical character Shishak, who went and plundered the Temple of Solomon and captured the fortified cities in Judah. And from that point, we get the synchronism between the Libyan pharaoh Shoshenq, the founder of the 22nd dynasty, and Rehoboam in his year 5 when the Temple of Solomon was plundered. And that lock has been with us ever since. We still use it today. All Egyptologists use that lock today. Doesn't matter what you do with the chronology, that is a fixed point that you can't change. But within 20 years, other scholars who now had developed the reading of the hieroglyphs in a more sophisticated fashion reread that name. Instead of Judah Hamalkuth, it actually reads Yad Hamelech. And you can see that. This is where you get your first hieroglyphic lesson today. 2 reeds represent Y. The little chick bird is an A. You have a hand, which is D. Then you have Ha-Melech. That's the K down there. That's the R, the lion. And so it means hand of the king. It does not mean the kingdom of Judah. And what it actually represents is probably an inscription like a monument or a stela that's been erected somewhere in Israel that is a monument of a record of a campaign of an Egyptian pharaoh. And it's mentioned here. And I'm going to show you why it can't be the kingdom of Judah. The first reason is that very close, within a couple of these name rings from Yad Hamelech, we have this name ring, and that name ring reads Aruna. Aruna. And Aruna, of course, is not anywhere near Judah. If we look at a map of Israel, we see Aruna is located at the Aruna Pass, which comes through from the Jezreel Valley onto the Sharon Plain, very close to Megiddo. Megiddo is just located here. It's a long way from Jerusalem. And so Yad Hamelech, which is on that name ring there you saw, must be in this area because it's only 2 name rings away from Aruna. It's nowhere else. It's got to be very close to Aruna. So when you look at it, if you actually look at the distances involved, it's around 100 kilometers from Aruna and Yad Hamelech to the kingdom of Judah and Jerusalem. Therefore, Champollion was mistaken in identifying Judah the kingdom in this campaign. When we look more carefully at the text, 2 Chronicles 12:9, so Shishak, the king of Egypt, advanced on Jerusalem and carried off the treasures of the temple and the treasures of the royal palace. He took everything away, including the golden shields which Solomon had made. So where is Jerusalem? If this guy Shoshenq is Shishak, surely Jerusalem must be a captive city that you see on that list. After all, it's the biggest city in the area, the richest city in the area. He's not going to simply miss it out. He's going to include it in this relief. But when you look for it, you don't find it. Here you can see a part of the wall where it should be, and you can see that the name rings are not destroyed in that lower row. And here we can read 2 very famous cities in the Bible, Gibeon, Gabayana, and on the other side, Mahanaim. So if you know your geography, Gibeon is on the way up through the Shephelah, leading up to the hill country, the road that goes over north of Jerusalem and descends down into the Jordan Valley, and that's where you'll find Mahanaim on the far side of the Jordan. So Jerusalem should appear between the two, and it's not there. So basically what we're saying here is that there is no Jerusalem, there is no kingdom of Judah in this inscription. It's a completely different campaign. If we look at the overall first 3 rows, this is where Jerusalem should be, and this is Yad Hamelech down here, and Aruna over here. The two don't relate. This campaign is not against the kingdom of Judah. If we look at the fortified strongholds of Rehoboam that you see here on this map, what you find is that they are actually not the subject of the campaign of Shoshenq. Shishak attacks Judah. He comes up from Egypt and attacks these fortified settlements and goes on to Jerusalem. If we look at Shoshenq's campaign, and there's a list of some of the highlights of that campaign, he comes up the coast and then he bypasses Judah and crosses over the hill country and descends down into the Jordan Valley. He then goes up the Jezreel Valley, comes through the Aruna Pass onto the Sharon Plain, and then he heads down and he does a little campaign down in the Negeb. So if you look at that, what he doesn't do is go to Judah. He misses Judah like the plague. He's nowhere near Judah. In fact, his campaign is all about Israel, the northern kingdom. That's where he's focused. He's not focused on Judah at all. And then he's focused on the Negev in the south. So the one place that Shishak goes to, Judah, Shoshenq does not go to. And yet, if you read your Bibles, you'll find that actually the northern kingdom of Israel, Jeroboam's kingdom, who is the competing king in this divided monarchy period, he went down to Egypt and was an ally, protege of Pharaoh. So there's no way in the world that Shishak will be campaigning against his ally and ignoring his enemy, Solomon's son, Rehoboam. So the two campaigns, the one of Shoshenq and the one of Shishak, simply don't match. All you're left with then is this name Shoshenq and Shishak that sound vaguely familiar. So what I did was I questioned this whole issue. I said, you cannot date the entire Egyptian history on the basis of this dodgy synchronism. Is that a word you all understand, Americans, dodgy? It means a bit suspicious, okay? So the conclusion has to be, Shoshenq I does not appear to be Shishak of the Bible, the plunderer of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. And once we get over that issue, for instance, here's a quote from one of the leading professors in Egyptology. He says, this is Hornung, Eric Hornung, there remain many uncertainties about the Third Intermediate Period, as critics such as David Rohl have rightly maintained. Even our basic premise of the 925 BC for Shoshenq campaign in Jerusalem is not built on solid foundations. So if you have 925 BC, the biblical date for year 5 of Rehoboam, you cannot fix Shoshenq to that date because the two campaigns do not match. They are not the same person. The biblical Shishak is not Shoshenq of the Bible.
David, could I just ask you a question here? Why is it so important? What does Egypt give the rest of the Mediterranean world, the ancient world?
That's a very good question.
The reason why this is critical is because I didn't know this, but you explained.
Okay. Because Egypt is the richest ancient world nation in terms of texts, because of the preservation of the desert, because they carved in stone, they've got so much material for people to study like me. And therefore they lend this authority to the rest of the ancient world. If you go to Megiddo, for instance, in the Holy Land, or any biblical city, Hatzor, or wherever you like, you won't find an inscription on the walls. You go to the so-called Solomonic Date, it doesn't have a label saying this is built by King Solomon. You go to Egypt, and you can look for a gateway of Ramesses II, and his name's all over it. So you know who built that. You can't say the same thing for the Bible lands. So what you do is, scholars date the archaeology of the Holy Land based on finding Egyptian artifacts in the ground. So if you dig up a scarab of Ramesses II in a particular level, you date that level to Ramesses II. It's not dated by the Bible at all. It's dated by ancient Egypt. And that goes for Greece, it goes for Turkey, it goes for Cyprus, it goes for Crete, it goes for Sudan. All those civilizations get their dating from Egypt. They borrow it from Egypt. So if Egypt's wrong, everything else is wrong. Does that answer your question?
And that's where the challenge comes, because people are reluctant to suggest anything is wrong because they've already somewhat poured the cement and it's hardened.
Exactly. It's carved in stone, literally. The Egyptian dating from the time of Champollion has been carved in stone ever since. And the only way to solve the problem is to knock the monument down and build it again from the foundation upwards, which is my job, is to do that. I'm not on my own, by the way. There's a number of other scholars working on this as well. But Hornung recognizes the issue. We are not safe with our Egyptian chronology. It is by no means fixed the way everybody says it is. Egyptologists use the Bible to date the start of the 22nd dynasty. This is Shoshenq, to 945 BC. The reason is that Shoshenq campaigned in the Holy Land, in Canaan, in his year 20. So you backdate to his year 1. So his dynasty begins in 945 BC, based on the Bible. They then date Ramesses II, our so-called Pharaoh of the Exodus, by calculating backwards from that position, from 945 BC, adding up the reign lengths, going back through the 21st dynasty and the 20th dynasty, back to the 19th dynasty, where you find Ramesses. So Ramesses gets his date from the biblical synchronism. You following? They then find no evidence for the Exodus and the conquest in the time of Ramesses II. Wonder why? So what do? They therefore reject the Bible and call it a work of pious fiction. Think about what's going on here. So the Bible is used to establish Egyptian chronology, which is then used to dismiss the Bible. Now that's a beautiful case of circular reasoning. Don't use the Bible to date Egypt. Date Egypt from the internal evidence and then look for synchronisms with the Bible. That's the right methodology. Now, I told you this was going to be complicated. Are you still following me? So, if we've dismissed Shoshenq as the pharaoh who plundered the Temple of Solomon, it's my job to come up with the real Shishak. Is it not? Because I don't believe you can knock something down without rebuilding it. So this is my reconstruction. And you're going to be shocked now when you read that subheading. Was Ramesses the Great, Ramesses II, the biblical Shishak? Suddenly, Yul Brynner, playing Ramesses, is no longer an adversary of Moses, Charlton Heston. He's now become the guy who took the golden shields from the temple. Is that even remotely possible? Well, it is. And it's all about a name, which I'm going to go into now for you. So now we're going to get into really complicated linguistic arguments. This is a tablet, clay tablet, that was found in Turkey at the capital of Hattusa of the Hittite Empire. You know, the Hittites are mentioned in the Bible. Now, it just so happens that in year 5 of Ramesses II, he fought the most famous battle in ancient history against the Hittites. It's called the Battle of Kadesh. Kadesh being in North Syria and the Orontes River. And about 15 years later, after a lot of fighting, the Hittite emperor and Ramesses decided to make a peace treaty. They said, no more fighting. We're going to be buddies from now on, and we're going to protect each other if we have any trouble. Well, this is the Hittite version of that treaty. It's also recorded on the walls of Karnak in hieroglyphics. Now, this is something you have to understand. Just like Hebrew, Egyptian language does not have any vowels written. Okay, so just consonants. So when you read a name, you should not expect, in Egyptians, you will not see the consonants within that name. However, the language of the Akkadian language that the Hittites used to record on this treaty, and they use for all their diplomatic correspondence, is a syllabic language, not a consonantal language. So they do sound the vowels. So you get groups of letters, ta, mi, da, mu, nu. Those are all little syllables with vowels. So when they record the name of Ramesses, on this tablet saying Ramesses signed this treaty with King Hattusilis III, you actually get the name Ramesses written in cuneiform Akkadian. And you can read that with the vowels. Okay? Now you're going to get a shock, because you think he's called Ramesses, don't you? He's not. Ramesses is the Greek version of his name. It's not actually the name that it was pronounced in Egypt or anywhere else in the ancient world. So you're now going to learn what his name really sounded like. Well, the first part of his name, because he has two names, he has a birth name and a coronation name. So the coronation name comes first, and then his birth name comes second. You see it in two cartouches. We Egyptologists, we have something called Egypto-speak. It's a sort of way we communicate with each other, so we can refer to these things in our own way. And what we do is we insert the letter E wherever we don't know the actual value of a vowel. So we go Uzamatre Setepenre. That's his coronation name. But on this treaty, it doesn't sound like that at all. It sounds like Washmuria Shatapnaria. That's actually how it sounded to the clerks, the ambassadors, when they wrote down the name of Ramesses as they heard it in ancient Egyptian. Washmuria Shatapnaria. So Uza Matre is Wash Uza, Mua Mart, Ria is Ra or Re. Shatapnaria is Setepenre, so we call it Setepenre, but Shatapnaria. So when you get to the ancient language, you can start to learn a lot more about the reality of the language and the reality of the names of these people. And we'll do this with Joseph later as well. So then his birth name, Ramesses Meriamun, as we say, is Riamashisha Miamana. So Amun in ancient Egyptian is really pronounced Amana. As we know, Ra is Ria. Mash is the same as Moshe in Hebrew, born of. And Shisha, the end of that name, is very important, because in the ancient world, nobody was going to go, every time they wanted to speak about this king, Washmira Shatamaria Riamashesha Miamana. It was too much of a mouthful. So they gave him a nickname. We call it a hypochoristicon. What that means is a short form of your name. I'll give you an example. Timothy and Tim. Lady Di, Princess Diana. Some people say Dave for David. We all have these short form names. They're not like a nickname, like Shorty or Blondie or Fatso. They're short forms of the name, and it's very commonly used today without realizing we use these hypochoristicons. Well, the ancient world was no different. The ancient world was exactly the same. Kings were called by short form names. It just so happens that Ramesses had a short form of his name, which was used all over the Levant, in Syria, in the Holy Land, and in Egypt. The common folk, the ordinary folk, gave him a short form of his name. And it's based on that. They called him Shisha. Are you starting to smell Shishak in that? But hang on a minute. What happened to the Kof, the K, at the end? Why is there no K, as in Shishak? Well, here we have a little conundrum for you. Let me show you the development of two letters from the Hebrew alphabet, right from the very beginning of the development of the original alphabet that we use today. Here we see two letters. We have the Q, the Kof, and the Wav, the W. And going back through time, through Hebrew, Greek, Paleo-Hebrew, Phoenician, right the way back to something called Proto-Sinaitic. Now, later on today, I'm going to take you to a turquoise mine in Sinai, where we find the first evidence of the Hebrew alphabet in use in ancient Egypt, developed out of the hieroglyphs by one genius. And you'll find out who he is later. But in that particular case here, we have a sign which crops up over and over again, this one. You see it coming? We call it the lollipop. What do you call the lollipop? Popsicle, is that right? Over here?
Tootsie Pop.
Okay, that'll do. So look at that sign appears in both the letter Wav and the Kof. But in time, it evolves. So, in the 15th century, In Proto-Sinaitic, in Sinai, it's a wav. So this lollipop is a wav.
And this is an older time period. In other words,
so what do you mean?
You're coming from 15th century BC.
This way,
yeah,
towards
so,
the present.
Yeah, so this is the older on the right hand side.
This is the oldest one.
Yeah.
Then when we get to the 8th century BC, the lollipop has shifted up and now has become a cough. Okay? Now, what happens between the 15th century and the 8th century? Well, that's where Shishak is located, just after the death of Solomon, in the 10th century. So which sign are we looking at? The scribe sees this sign, and he doesn't know whether it's a wav or a kof. So our first clue is this Isbet Sata Ostrakon is an alphabet, an abecedary. You can see the letter Aleph here, Tav at the end. This is the first time we see the alphabet written in the 9th century. It's a schoolboy's practice piece on a piece of pottery. And here we have a resh, and here we have a kof, okay, in the right position within the alphabet. So we know in the 9th century, the lollipop represented the kof. Okay? So 9th century, this is the time after Solomon. This is the divided monarchy period. If a scribe came across that letter, he would read it as kof. Okay? Go back to the time of Ramesses II and the city of Lachish, stratum 4, you get this inscription. Again, reading Bostraphaedon, so that direction, and then this direction. And here, you will see the letter is a wav. So we have clear evidence that in the time of Ramesses, this letter represented, the lollipop represented a wav, and in the time of the divided monarchy, it became the letter kof. So there's a wav, and it's the 12th century BC. On no revised chronology here, this is the date for Ramesses and the conventional scheme. So there's our two symbols from the two sources. Are you struggling to find a difference? It's like if we take this symbol in our modern alphabet. If you don't take it in context, you can't read what that is. But if I put the three contexts it might be a capital I in the word identical. Or it might be a lowercase l in the word letter. Or it might be the number 1 in 1000. It all depends on context as to how you read that stroke, that vertical stroke. So we have the same problem with wav and kof, except it's in a name, and a name doesn't have a context. So you can't tell which it is. So here is the name Ramesses, is short form name, Sisa. This wav here in hieroglyphs is a vowel marker. You don't know the value of the vowel, it could be anything, but we believe from the Hittite inscription that it's an A. So Sisa and Shishak, without the vowels from the Bible. There it is written in Proto-Hebrew, Sin Yod, Sin Wav. And here is Shishak, Sin Yod, Sin Kof. Can you tell the difference? So, let's say for argument's sake, in the time of Josiah, when they found the sacred scroll in the temple, and they read it out to the people, that the scribe, who eventually wrote down the name as Shishak and vocalized it Shishak, had an older document where the word was really Sisa or Sisu with a wav. And that's where the K comes from. So we have a mistake in the reading because of the change of the sign from wav to kof, which is why Shisha becomes Shishak. So in fact, Ramesses II in his Hypercharisticon, known in Israel as Shisha, is Shishak of the Bible, plunderer of Solomon's temple. That is the big mistake in chronology. Because now we're in a situation where everything was tied to that link between Shoshak and Shishak, and Ramesses was assigned to Moses. Everything was out of kilter, because what we had wrong was we identified the wrong king who plundered the Temple of Solomon, and in fact it's Ramesses II. So now we've got a situation on our hands where everything in the timeline is now floating. We have now a chance to see how it really fits together. And that is the key to understanding how the mechanism that leads to the film works. None of this is in the film. You don't get this in the film because it's too complicated to put on a big screen.
Well, here's the thing from a filmmaking standpoint, because this idea is, many people will say, radical, blasphemy. This is not part of our orthodoxy. And yet David, as he continued to defend his ideas, they continued to make sense. And some people said, well, they make too much sense, so they can't be right. I guess in the academic world, if it makes sense, it can't be right because everything else, doesn't make sense. So
the expression they use is, it's too good to be true.
Too good to be true.
Have you heard that one before?
But I have to tell you that there are other examples of evidence for the biblical narrative showing up earlier, like the 104th Psalm, I believe. Is that correct?
Psalm 104.
Yeah, Psalm 104 shows up earlier, and it's attributed to Akhenaten.
Correct.
And because of that, what they are saying, even at Christian universities, is that the Bible gathered its sources from a variety of places. And
David nicked it from Akhenaten, is what they say, to put it politely.
And
instead of it being the creation of David, and then Akhenaten borrowed it from David, because in this timeline you're going to see working out here, and it's going to be in one of the later films, is Akhenaten is actually contemporary with David. So the two of them are reigning at the same time. This, what Psalm 104 comes into Egypt as the hymn to the sun, and you have the two at exactly the same time period.
And what did Akhenaten do? What did he say? There was only one?
He said there was only one God. And so he gets labeled by historians as the first monotheist. Okay? But with this revised chronology, everything goes back to normal. Moses becomes the first monotheist. And Akhenaten is the copier, not the originator.
And David, wouldn't you say that what you were suggesting too is that the problems aren't necessarily, he didn't start with the Bible. He just basically ended up saying, well, how did this impact the biblical narrative? What he started with was that Egypt has pharaohs, the whole dating of the pharaohs and things were out of place.
You know, my PhD thesis was on the Third Intermediate Period.
Right.
It had nothing to do with the Bible at all.
But he just then said, well, what are the other communities that this affects? And then all the other patterns started to show up. And so as a filmmaker says, am I going to make a film that's dodgy, as you would say?
Dodgy.
Yes. I said, well, let's look and see how dodgy this really is. And actually, there is a sequential pattern, and we've only showed you part of it. There's a lot more to the patterns. And what I would say is that I'm going to say you have to make up your mind. We're going to show you strong evidence, and then the evidence and the Bible, you can think about that and make your own decisions. And that releases everyone from us saying, well, this is exactly this or whatever. But it makes too much sense to me as a filmmaker I couldn't make a film if it wasn't something there. You can't write a story and you can't look at these things. We're not doing smoke and mirrors here. And like Brian Wood said, I didn't plant the evidence in the ground. You can't do that. All you can do is interpret it. And so what his interpretation is does make sense. And that's the reason why I felt that you needed to know. Otherwise, right?
Yeah, it's not just that though. I mean, for me at least, and I would have thought for most people, normal people, isn't this exciting to be able to re-examine all this stuff and try and piece it together? Why are these archaeologists and historians so scared of it? Why don't they want to talk about it? Tell me a little thing about, I'm not going to mention any names here of any particular colleges, but the film was shown a few nights ago at a very, very, very impressive and important college in this country, biblical college. And they said they would show it on the basis that I would not turn up to defend it. Okay, and then they gave this diatribe, having seen the film, saying why it was completely rubbish and nothing worked, and they just launched into their student body without anybody there to defend the position of the film or anything. Their attitude, one of the scholars, a very famous scholar, stuck a photograph of me up when I was a rock and roll star on the screen and said, would you trust this man? to reconstruct your history for you because, look, he's a rock and roll person. He's not a real scholar. Ignoring all my degrees and all my other things that I've got. So, anyway, we're going to wind up very soon. But I just want to show you why Ramesses is the key to all this. Now, it's all about this thing called the Israel Stela. Have you heard of that? It's the most famous inscription in Egypt because it's a great stela by King Meneptah, which mentions Israel at the bottom of it, which is why it's called the Israel Stela. Here is the name Israel at the bottom. You can hardly make it out, but if I just highlight the text, you have the two reeds again that we saw earlier, which is the Y, Yish, then you have S, then you have the R, the mouth, Ri, Al. Now, in Egyptian, there is no letter for L, so they use the letter for R. So, Israel, and then you have the throw stick, which is the determinative figure for an Asiatic or a Semite. Then you have two figures, the man and the woman, seated together, with plural strokes at the bottom. Now, those plural strokes indicate that this is a people. So it's the people of Israel that's written here, or the nation of Israel. Now, remember that Meneptah is the successor of Ramesses II. Ramesses II reigned for 66 years. His son came to the throne in old age, and he recorded this inscription. He wasn't really in a position to do much fighting himself. He was rather too old to do so. And nevertheless, he mentions the defeat of a people of Israel. Now, what is the context of this? Well, the text actually says, Israel, and then it continues, is laid waste. His seed, because his, referring to Jacob, Israel, is no more. That's a standard phrase within Egyptian texts for defeated people. It doesn't mean anything specific. It just means we've defeated Israel. They're conquered. Now, the Meneptah stela indicates a nation of Israel already existing in the Holy Land during the late 19th dynasty. Now, if you think about it, if Moses was a contemporary of Ramesses and the Israelites had left in the reign of Ramesses II, how on earth could they be a nation already established in Canaan? They were wandering around the wilderness for 40 years. This doesn't make sense. If we look at the context of the text, it's actually a poem. It actually goes for several lines describing lots of different nations, and I'll just show you the actual poem itself. It says, the princes are prostrate, saying shalom. And it does actually say shalom in the text. Not one raises his head amongst the 9 bows. The 9 bows are the traditional enemies of Egypt. Desolation is for Chehanu. Chehanu is Libya. Hatti, the Hittites, is pacified. Plundered is Canaan with every evil. Carried off is Ashkelon. Seized upon is Gezer. Yanoam is made non-existent. Now, there are 4 major towns in the Holy Land. Then it goes, Israel is laid waste, his seed is no more. Charu, which is Syria, has become a widow because of Egypt. Then the last 2 lines are, all lands together are pacified, everyone who was restless has been bound. Now, people have studied this text and realized something. It's actually balanced. It's actually what we call a reflection poem. In other words, if I put the units in, you can see it starts with 2 lines, 2 sentences, and it ends with 2 general sentences. So there's actually a pattern evolving here. It's another one of these patterns. It then has, B, 2 major entities. Chehanu is the entire Libya. Hatti is the entire Turkey. Then it has Israel, wherever that is, and the entire Syria. So in this context, Israel is a major power. It's as big as the Hittites. It's as big as the Libyans. It's as big as Syria. And then in the middle, we get 4 towns. Canaan is Gaza. Ashkelon, you know, is one of the Philistine cities. Gezer and Yanoam. So this tells us straight away, this is not a bunch of Israelites wandering around the desert. This is an actual kingdom we're dealing with here, a major power. That is not possible if Moses is a contemporary of Ramesses II. It's out of the question. Whereas if Ramesses II is a contemporary of Solomon, which we just worked out because he's Shishak, then we have a completely different ballgame here. We have the kingdom of Solomon mentioned here in this text. So here are the inscriptions of that text actually on the walls of Karnak. The poem is actually a scribe comes along, he wanders along the walls of Karnak, he writes down all the defeated peoples, and he makes this poem for his master, Pharaoh Meneptah. So here is the Libyans being fought, Chehenu being defeated by the Pharaoh. Here are the Hittites on the same wall, being taken away in captive. And then we have the city of Parcanan, the next one in the list here, Gaza, with the Shasu Bedouin. There's the name, you can read it here, Dimien, which is the city of Parcanan, Gaza. Now, all these places are located on the wall reliefs of Seti I, who is the grandfather of Meneptah. So the first three defeated enemies of Egypt, Chehenu, Hatti, and Parcanan, are drawn from the victorious campaigns of Seti I at Karnak. So if we then go round to the other side of the hypostyle hall to look at the campaigns there, the remaining 5 defeated enemies, Ashkelon, Gezer, Yanoam, Israel, and Karu, Syria, are drawn from the victorious campaigns of Ramesses II, which are on the far side of the temple. So if we look at a map or a plan, this is the hypostyle hall between the second pylon and the third pylon. This is where the Shoshenq relief is, outside here. He's campaigning into northern Israel. And what we have is the battle against Libya. Chehenu is on the outside wall here. On the upper register is the battle against the Hittites, Hatti, and then we have Parcanan on this wall here. All those are Seti I campaigns. Then we cross over to the far side, and we get the campaigns of Ashkelon, Gezer, Yanoam, and Israel there, and we get the campaign against Syria along here. So if you walk around Karnak, it matches exactly with the poem. Okay, so these are not the victories of Meneptah. They are the victories of his dynasty, his grandfather and father. He's too old to do any of this. So he's claiming for his dynasty as he sits on the throne, as I look out upon my empire, this is what my dynasty has achieved. So here we have a golden opportunity to actually look at the defeat of Israel on the walls of Karnak. Instead of having a text, we now have visuals we can look at. So I'm going to show you what we have of that. Sadly, it's very scanty. So here's the Syria wall on the outside of the temple, and we're going to go over here to this area to look at this particular wall. We call it the Ashkelon wall today. In the center, we have the Hittite treaty here, and we have 4 campaigns, one there, one above, mostly destroyed, and then tantalizingly just a few blocks of a scene on this side. And unfortunately, that's where Israel's located. So we have Ashkelon, Gezer, Yanoam, and Israel. So I'm going to take you to look at those few blocks. Here we see the campaign against Ashkelon. Here's the town here. You remember the story in the Bible of the king of Moab offering his own child when the Israelites come to besiege the city? Well, here we have the king dropping his own child off the battlements in sacrifice to stop Ramesses II from defeating them. But above this scene, here's the name Ashkelon, Ashkelana. This is what we're interested in. That is what's left of the battle against Israel. Now, you can't see very much, I admit, but when you examine it closely, there's a melee here. There's lots of bodies being killed here. We have a horse here. We have a chariot wheel. We have a larger horse, the back legs of a larger horse. I'll try and help you out with this. And then we have captives being taken away with long gowns on down to their ankles, taken off as prisoners towards Egypt. Now, that's what we have today, but what I was able to do was take a similar scene from another part of Karnak to reconstruct that so you can see what it is. So watch this happen and you'll see what the scene is all about. So now you can see clearly what it is. You have Ramesses II and his chariot over here on the missing section. His chariot horses here, the large ones, prancing with the reins of the king going across here. And underneath the horses of the chariot team, is a smaller chariot with a small wheel, in which we have Semites falling dead, And the horse, if you notice here, the tiny horse is running away from the battle, running away from Ramesses in defeat. So what is this representing? There you can see the horse in more detail. You'll notice here, if we go closer, the head of the horse is down, exhausted. It's not a proud Egyptian horse. This is a defeated Israelite horse driving a chariot, or pulling a chariot. Now think about this. If Moses, Yul Brynner, was a contemporary of Charlton Heston, Ramesses II, and this is Ramesses II fighting against Israel, and Israel has got chariots, there's something very wrong there. Moses didn't have chariots. Moses took the people out of Egypt without chariots. If you look through your Bible, you won't find mention of Israelite chariots until the time of late David and Solomon. Solomon, who built chariot cities. All the time before that, whenever the Israelites, who were basically an infantry group, fought against people with chariots, they would lead them into quagmires and swamps so that the chariots became inactive. Or, for instance, when Saul fought the Philistines, he moved his troops up Mount Gilboa so they couldn't use the chariots. The enemy couldn't use the chariots on the slopes. So, for example, in Joshua, the Lord said to Joshua, "You will hamstring the horses and burn the chariots. We have no use for them. We don't know how to ride them. We don't know how to drive them." And a scholar, typical reference from a scholar here, only during the monarchy period did the horse become important for chariot warfare. That reinforces my argument that Shishak is Ramesses, Shisha, because in his time he was fighting against the United Kingdom of Solomon and his successor Rehoboam, who did have chariots. And we know that Ramesses fought against Israel somewhere in the hill country.
So, David, what you're suggesting is that the Merneptah poem is reestablishing the greatness of the great defeats that the dynasty, Seti the first and
Seti the first and Ramesses
the second, and that those defeats then are visually represented on the Karnak temple.
Yeah. Essentially what you've got is a pharaoh in his mature years, maybe 65 years old, sitting on his throne, needs some monument to celebrate something, wants to be proud of something. He hasn't done much in his own reign. So he thinks, now what have my family done? Well, all over the walls of Karnak are the records of these wonderful campaigns. So he sends a scribe off with a notepad, a bit of papyrus, says, write down the history of my ancestors, my grandfather and father, write down what they achieved, and I'll sign the bottom of it and say, this is my dynasty, I'm proud of this. So we can then say that Ramesses was the one who fought against Israel, whatever that fight was, whatever that battle was. So that's the situation we're in. We're in a situation where Ramesses has no longer got the bad press of being the pharaoh of the oppression, the pharaoh of the Exodus. He's now a king of Egypt who came up and virtually put an end to the rule of Solomon's dynasty, if you like, with Rehoboam. Rehoboam became a servant of Egypt once this plundering had taken place, as the Bible says.
So the taking of the shields from the temple would have been that defeat?
Yes. The treasures that came out of the temple and from the palace would have gone back to Egypt in the time of Ramesses II, who was the wealthiest pharaoh in the entire history of Egypt. Now, I just want to close with another piece of evidence very shortly, which is very important also to show you that Israel was already well established in the Holy Land, in the kingdom of Israel, before the time of Ramesses. So if Ramesses is the pharaoh of the Exodus, what the heck is going on here? But we have a new piece of evidence, which you'll see in the movie as well. This only came up very, very recently, a couple of years ago. One Egyptologist was rooting around in the basement of the Berlin Museum that nobody had been in for donkey's years, and he came across a granite block from a pedestal of a statue, which had been found in Egypt 100 years ago and had been stored in the basement of the museum. And he dusted it down and he started to read the names of the rings, the name rings of the captive peoples, the statue up here, And around the base, you have a row of captive peoples. This fragment has 3 captive peoples on it. We're already familiar with them. Ashkelon, Ishkelana, Kiananu, Canaan. And then, unfortunately, sadly broken away, we have a few signs. And he realized that he could restore that name ring, and I'm going to do that for you now. Here it is on the broken edge of the block. Let's put the rest of it in from what we know. And suddenly, we have the name Israel. So, this is dated to the middle of the 18th dynasty, 100 years before Ramesses. And yet, on this block, we have the name Israel as a defeated nation. Israel. So that proves positive for me that there's no way that Ramesses II can be the Pharaoh of the Exodus. It's absolutely out of the question. So what we're going to do this afternoon is to tell you who was the Pharaoh of the Exodus, who was the Pharaoh of Joseph's famine, when it all happened, when Jericho fell. All those things we're going to deal with this afternoon. But this was my journey. This was the way I came to the realization that I couldn't be an ordinary Egyptologist working in my ivory tower, teaching students for the rest of my life, that I had to take this and actually introduce it to the world, because I think it's really important that we realize that the reason why we have the pious myth of scholars about the Bible is because they've made a huge blunder in the way they work the timeline out of ancient Egypt. And that is the key to understanding where the real Bible is located. Thank you.